Today, I'm finally trying out the Akai Force, by far one of the most requested devices for me to try on this channel. I've got a good amount of experience with clip launching groove boxes like the Innovation Circuit, as well as a lot of experience with the MPC-1, which shares a lot of the UI and features. So I have high hope for this one. Let's jump into it. All right, so here's the box. It is so big that the mic stand that my camera is on doesn't go high enough to show the whole thing. It is stupidly huge. Oh good, styrofoam, my favorite. Quick start guide. So in here, power cable, multiple MIDI converters, USB 3.0 cable, I think this is the power brick, and snacks. This thing is heavy and quite big. Here's a first look at the rather extensive I/O. Oh, it's pretty. With its smooth finish. Wow. So, here are my arms. Here are my elbows for scale. I'm a small guy, so this is a big device for a small dude. But yeah, this thing has got some girth. With the pads. The knobs have some nice resistance to them, and they're like the little screen things. Buttons with some sound to them. This is button ASMR. And the encoder. Flimsy feeling. Crossfader. And a nice big volume knob. On the MPC-1, the volume knob is on the back, which was always a bit of an awkward spot, because you're always kind of rolling the dice based on which way... Oh, there's a Q-Mix volume knob and a separate headphone volume knob here on the front. Cool. And a spot for an SD card. I should be able to put in my MPC-1's SD card. That way I can have all my samples and key group programs and all that kind of stuff just ready to go. And we got dedicated buttons with shift commands. See, where's my shift button? These buttons, the way they're labeled is really light. I don't know if you can even see that on camera. It kind of depends on the lighting. But that's fine. Eventually, I want to just kind of know where this stuff is by muscle memory, because I'm anticipating great things from this thing. This thing's built like a freaking tank. Ooh! Okay, we get to do this. We get to peel off the screen protector. Oh. So here's a more up-close view of your encoder knobs. Your main rotary encoder, master volume, and hopefully now you can see what I was talking about the button labeling being weirdly faint. You might not even be able to see this. The white stuff is like the shift commands, I do believe. Also, in here, I believe is where you can install like a proper hard drive if you wanted to. I might. I'm tempted. So real quick, here's a look at our I/O. CV, multiple outputs, a separate gain. I believe this is for the input. MIDI in, out, and through. Interesting that it's not full size. That's hence the converters, and one for each port. This is the gain input for the two mic inputs, and these also function as instrument inputs. Phantom power, whether you turn that on or off, and you can switch it between line and instrument gain. Nice. Same on both of these. USB 3.0, and then two normal USB ports, Ethernet, power, all that kind of stuff. I'm so sad I'm gonna get fingerprints on this nice screen. All right, so I have powered this on once to connect it to my computer and update the firmware, but now let's turn it on for reals. So I'm just gonna start straight away with an empty project. And by default, looks like we have a plugin and an audio track loaded. And I have like half watched a tutorial on this, but I'm going into this like more or less blind. So what I do know is that each of these are my different tracks, and I can just add a track, say a drum track, for instance. So how do you load stuff? We do have a nice prominent menu button here, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to be had. So if I ever get stuck, I can like look at this, but I want to make sure I know where dedicated buttons are so I can rely on the screen as little as possible. And also these like buttons are now backlit, so everything's a lot more visible. So we got a step sequencer in here, ARP stuff. Where's a browse button? That's what I really need right now. There we go, load. We've got places, so far quite similar to the MPC one, and I've got all my MPC stuff in here already. So let me just get some sort of drum kit. Okay, so quick hiccup here. My audio interface is hearing this. So you're hearing this. I've turned up the phone's volume, and I am not hearing this. Oh, here we go. I turned up the Q mix. Interesting. So these are my master tracks. This is clip launching. This is my knob configuration. Oh boy, I'm lost. I'm very lost. So I've got clips selected here. Ooh, here we go. This is promising. Okay. That feels pretty good to play. Nice, okay. I like these pads quite a bit. They're firm. The velocity sensitivity feels good. They're very accurate, very precise. Kind of wish they were a little bit like taller this way, but here's the advantage that that has. As I'm guessing, I can just do this. Yeah. That's what I was missing from the MPC, is the ability to have your sound selection and your step sequencer on the same pad view. I want to see them both at the same time, all on the pads, much like on the Innovation Circuit. Or there's kind of a modified version of that on something like the Roland MC707. This is exactly what I want out of a step sequencer experience. And it's really nice to see that with, you know, the power of the MPC. So let's do this. And it looks like you can input different velocities. Excellent. And so what I really want to do right now is just turn this whole thing down. The implementation of these knobs reminds me a lot of the Machine, which is very welcome. And also, this is flickering on my camera like crazy, so let me adjust my settings a little bit. Oh, that's worse. Oh, dear Jeebus. All right, we're fixing that in post. Excellent. So that's exactly what I want to see. And then I can go back to launch and launch a new pattern, which has nothing in it. So let me maybe put something in it. So note. So this is how you would see all of your notes all laid out on here. And then here's your step sequencer again. So let me just put another 4 on the floor kick. Back to launch. And as far as I understand, you can change how long... Oh, that's going to take some getting used to. As far as I know, you can change like how long it'll wait, how long it'll run through the previous clip before changing over. Also, I keep accidentally hitting other clips for triggering sounds, so that will take some getting used to. I know I've got access to the hype synth on here because the hype synth was here first. It's grown on me a whole lot, so... Oh, so we could copy this. Copying clip, yada yada. Okay. Super straightforward. And now I can hop back into my step sequencer and maybe just get rid of these. Okay, this like musically sucks, of course, but we're just trying to get our heads around the interface right now. Oh, interesting. You can still launch the clips corresponding to the track that you're on with these buttons here. And here's a stop. Oh, that's interesting. All right. We're going to do it until it flickers, and then we'll unplug it, and it'll be a whole thing, and I'll swear and make annoying sounds. Okay, so that's cool. I like that bit of interface-ness. So now here's what I want to figure out. How can I do a parameter edit? So go into the individual pad settings. That's what I would really like to do right now. So I have a shift button. Let's see if that takes me there, because that brings up these shift commands. Which we've got all sorts of stuff to work with. Octave buttons dedicated right here. Excellent. Timing correct. This will probably show different views of your step sequencer. Let's try it. Oh, launch quantize. Okay. So that's what I was talking about earlier with the ability to like control how long it'll wait. So I could have it forced to go all 4 bars. And that is a 2-bar pattern. So it will just run through it twice. It just figured it out. That's interesting. I wonder if you can do this on a... Okay, it doesn't look like you can do it on a clip-by-clip basis, but you can still do it on the fly, which is interesting. Cool. So let's change that back to, let's say, 2 bars. And then you can double a pattern right here. Excellent. You can control its length. So if I hit Shift length, yep. That's interesting that there's a TC button and a quantize button. I'll have to figure out the difference and how it... I'm guessing the TC just sets your TC settings. It just toggles it on and off. Okay. We will figure that out later. But let's get back to our original goal to edit individual sounds. So here's my mixer, and that corresponds to the knobs exactly how I would expect it to. If I hit Shift Mixer, will it take me into the pad mixer? It looks like it. Oh, interesting. So these are still correlated to the overall volumes. So holding down knobs, I can change what the knobs correspond to. However, I don't see how to do it for pads. What if we say track? Oh, that's for the whole track. So it's got 2 sends, a pan, and its volume. Track effects rec? No. I'm sure there is some way to control these with these. I don't know what that way is, and if there isn't, I will be very annoyed. Launch config. Okay, I don't want to go into that right now. I want to go back to my notes for now. In fact, go to my steps for now. I'll bet if I go to config for this, yeah, you can see the step size, which is the thing I was trying to find earlier. But we're still trying to find how to edit the pads individually. Like we've got this, which is fine, but I don't want that. I want more. Oh, and so this still works. I kind of forgot it was here, to be honest. So like there's effects in here. That's a nice way of looking at it. Settings. You know what I really want though? More than effects, I want like envelopes. So for instance, this like reverby clap. Good, it selects those tracks. That's nice. But what I want to do is shorten this reverby clap. You know what I wish they did? I wish they would show your shortcuts as they correspond to these. So there's sample edit, there's track edit, there's pad mixer, there's mixer, we found both of those. There's browser, we found that. There's clip matrix and arrange, I think we found both of those. Let's just go to track edit. So this is what I'm trying to get to, but through a button, which I'm sure you can, I just don't know how yet. But regardless, this works exactly like it does on the MPC one and all the standalone MPCs. So now I can go into here. Well, envelopes. Here we go. Hit play. Turn that up. That's exactly what I would expect that to work like. And another thing I'd like to figure out at some point is a way to like assign these knobs for a live jam. So like assign it to a cutoff for a certain track or something useful for live jamming purposes without having to like menu dive. I don't know if that's possible, but this machine is flexible enough to where I would kind of hope it is. So this is the hype synth. So if I go to track edit, here are my parameters of the hype synth. I can change all the aspects of this, but what I want to do right now, so that's the plugin, I can change the plugin out. I want to change the preset. Let's just go some kind of bass. So this, I've hit shift. Yeah, and then note, oh. Yay. Cheese this out. And now, if I had step sequencer, are you not going to show me all the notes? Change the mode. Ooh, here we go. So here's the question. Does it change it for each track? So now if I do shift config for this one, that one's still in drum mode. This one's on note mode. So now, whoop, okay. So how do I edit a step then? Because obviously holding it down ain't gonna work. So say I want to elongate this bass note. Can I do this? Grid. There we go. So if nothing else, I can edit it through the grid. That's like fine, I guess. Even if I don't love it. it grew on me quite a bit. However, please tell me there's a better way to get to that. Whoa, no. Please, I don't want to communicate with Ableton, please. How do you get out of this? Okay, thank you. So that's interesting that some of this stuff seems to be hidden behind a couple of menus, and I'm guessing that there's actually a way to... No! Just take me to literally any other screen, please. So is this toggled or is this held down? It's toggled. Oh, cool. That's a clip stop. We're getting there. Oh, this is how you do your scenes. This is a scene. This is a scene. This is a scene. So on and so forth. We can work with that. That's very visual. So that's how you would want to like copy stuff around. However, interestingly, I think I would rather see it so you could like recombine clips into different scenes rather than have them laid out like this. Because if you make a change to one clip, you would want that one clip to go into all of the other scenes at once. You don't want to have to like copy it into multiple other scenes. Of course, I can get used to that. I've gotten used to it on other devices, like the Roland VerseLab MV1's a good example. And that might not even be the case, but so far that's what it seems like. And that's how you stop it right on cue. That puts it right into play mode. God dang. Oh, the daily struggle. Okay, so what if we load up maybe a key group? Let's get one of my own key groups in here. Link in the description. You can get them for $5. Works with the Force, MPCs, and helps support me trying out new gadgets like this one. Where do I get to my freaking track edit? So this is key group 1. Oh, actually, I need to go to browse first. Load. So I can preview these. No, I cannot. So let me just choose something arbitrarily. And then I'm going to go into my track edit. And that's loaded up. So launch, we choose that clip. See, I kind of want to see the contextual screen for that. We can at least get the, oh, that's default length. So why isn't this correlated? That could be good, but I think it could also really get under my skin pretty much immediately. Gosh, I sure would like to edit this. Fixed length recording off. Okay. If this is machine-like, I will be very, very pleased. So we're just going to test this. Let me go to my note, and we're just going to record some garbage. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, what the hell? What have you done? All right, I'm clearly at the point where I need to dig into the manual and some tutorials, so I'm going to do that, and I'll be back. And it is a few days later, brought to you on the floor of this Airbnb. Sorry about the bad audio, I'm working with what I've got. But I've been working with the Force, I brought it with me on this trip, and I've got some updates regarding the workflow. It's starting to click. A bit ago, I watched a tutorial by Maxipok Music, I believe that's how you pronounce it. It's excellent, I'll link it at the end of this video. I highly recommend checking it out if you want to get into the Force. It taught me pretty much everything I needed to know to really get into it. And so I've been able to kind of pick up my MPC workflow and transfer it over to this pretty smoothly. I also wrote up a little cheat sheet just to get me unstuck, but I've already stopped referring to it. So that's where I'm at currently, and for the final portion of this video, I'll be back in the studio with better audio. And we are back in the studio, and I've got some thoughts that I want to show you. It'll be a little scatterbrained, but hopefully useful. So one thing I was a little nervous about was just how big this device is the convenience factor of button combinations, because on my MPC-1, yes, there are a lot of buttons, but they're all clustered very close together, and so I'm very used to being able to do button combinations with just one hand, kind of absent-mindedly. And on this, fortunately, it seems like they have considered that. So, for instance, yes, you can get to some functions by holding down edit, But for a bunch of the basic stuff you're going to need, it's going to be either one button press, like hitting note to get to all your different notes, for instance, or you might go to clip, and that brings up on your screen your clip settings. And then you can go to your grid and all that kind of stuff. You could hold down menu and then use your thumb to press any of these. And by the way, any of these buttons can have like a temporary menu if you just hold it down and then release it. And then if you go shift clip, that takes you to the instrument settings. Pretty much what you'd expect once you're told that. I only had to be told that once. And then, once again, that's a pretty natural movement to make. And that might seem like a small thing, but I think the ergonomics of something that's supposed to be kind of your main device are important. I don't love that play, stop, and record are up here, but then again, I'm just used to them being like down at the bottom on the MPC one, so that's fine. I can get used to that, and to a degree, I already have. Also, the screen will often be somewhat decoupled from the behavior of the pads, which I hated at first and have come to like a bit more once I actually started to understand it. So for instance, right now I've got all my samples pulled up in this drum program. Right now the screen is reacting to each one as I pull it up, pretty much exactly the way you'd expect. But what if I want to be able to do some finger drumming and launch clips at the same time? Well, I can hit the matrix button. These notes stay active, and now I can launch a clip. So that's actually fairly nice once you know that it's happening and know to expect it. And then if I want to go back to editing the instrument parameters, I hit shift and then clip, and then once again, this starts reacting to my pad presses again. And now that I have note active and the program edit active, I can just select another track and it'll pull up the different parameters for it. That's quite intuitive. That's very straightforward. That becomes quite fast to work with. Speaking of fast and impressive, over time, I've become very impressed with the Force's use of the screen. It feels like a bit of an upgrade from the screen on the MPC-1, even though it's basically the same. It's just a little more responsive. I feel like the contrast is a little bit better. It's hard for me to describe because I'm not an expert in such things, but it feels like a step up. And there are certain things that are very intuitive. Like you'd expect to see intuitive functionality like this. If I go to Matrix and I want to copy a pattern, all I have to do is hold this down, and then I've got all of my options. So I can copy the clip, and then I can hold this down to either create, or I could paste over it. That's kind of exactly what I expected. I didn't have to look at a manual for that. I just tried it, and lo and behold, it worked. I can also go into here and like edit event, and that takes me directly to the grid. Or I can go back to my matrix, hold that down, and edit clip instead, and that takes me to my clip settings, so I can change the length of it, its launch quantization. All that kind of stuff is quite nicely tied to the behavior of the screen. And those of y'all who have watched the channel for a while will know I'm a Groovebox guy. I love the Novation Circuit and Roland MC Grooveboxes. Like, I like the screenless or minimal screen workflow, but if a screen is going to be used, it should be used like this. It's utilized very well here, and I'm very impressed by that. One other nice feature of the screen that seems dead obvious in hindsight is the fact that when you hit undo, it actually tells you what you just undid. And so like you saw me create that clip, and then I just undid it, and it told me that it did that. And I don't have any more undos in this project, but let me go to edit this clip, and let me just record in some like piping hot garbage. And when I undo that, it'll say, once again, what it undid. So let me load up that other project. But with all that screen stuff out of the way, let's move back to the drum pads for a second, because they're all clustered in here, kind of the way that I would expect on the MPC-1, where you've got your different banks that have this 4x4 grid on them. Like, this is loaded in from a machine kit that I converted. That's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But regardless, in the typical machine and MPC layout, it's occupying these pads. But if I want, all of these can also hold samples. And I've started to change the way I think about loading in samples in the first place. For instance, on this track, I've loaded in a bunch of piano samples from Marlowe Diggs. And I've loaded them in linearly rather than on a grid. There's no reason they have to be on a grid. I kind of want to think of them a little more linearly because I want to sequence them out. And so I could just do that. I have all this space to work with, which is just nice. It's flexible. It's freeing, you know? However, there are still some growing pains. For one thing, I haven't gone into the song mode super deeply. I've tinkered with it a little bit, but there are certain quirks. Like if I go into the arrange window, you're going to be like launching clips and or scenes, and it'll actually record like all the individual MIDI notes in here, kind of like you'd see in a DAW, really. And then you can add like one-off instances of hits or fills or automation and all that kind of stuff, which is incredibly powerful and very DAW-like, but in a way that still feels hands-on. Like you could record a live performance into the sequencer, which is exactly where I'm going with this. That's what I want to build to. I want to do a live performance, but get the polish of a DAW production. And this is going to be able to do that for me. But there's still weird quirks. Like if you have quantization on while doing that, like I had this drum beat that I recorded in with the timing correct turned off, but then I turned quantization back on for everything else and started recording stuff into the song mode, and it started quantizing my drums, which I did not want. So all I had to do was turn it off. But still, there's weird little ways that things interact that are not necessarily intuitive, which is kind of a hallmark of Akai's software. They have a bunch of brilliant systems that sometimes clash and butt heads in ways that make you have to take a step back and think about what you're about to do because you're afraid of messing stuff up. That's something that I can get used to. That's something I've accepted. I'll take all the power that this gives me in return for that jank, but it's still jank. And I'm sure that there's a ton of stuff in the song mode that I'm missing out on that I fully intend to deep dive into in future videos. So if there's something major that I'm missing right now, please let me know. That will be incredibly helpful. But one more little bit of growing pains that I do want to mention are these buttons. They're incredibly useful. For one thing, if I want to mute like a single drum pad, I can hold down mute and just do it. Same with solo. And then like you can see which ones are in there. That's very quick and intuitive to work with, but it's very easy to accidentally leave one of these toggled. For instance, you can't see it right now, but I've got mute toggled, and then I've got my mixer pulled up here, and if I select this track, because I'm like, oh, I want to do something with this track, let me select it, boom, it just muted it. And that's not the behavior that I wanted in this case, but I just happened to leave that on, and so it followed my instructions, even though that's not what I intended, that's what I told it. And so that takes some getting used to. Same with soloing stuff. Same with record arm stuff. But the nice thing is if I leave record arm toggled and I switch tracks, it'll switch the note configuration based on which track I have equipped, regardless of which screen I'm on. So that can be both very powerful and a little bit finicky. Once again, there's some growing pains associated with this. I'm learning, I'm enjoying the process of learning it. Once I got over that initial hump of hesitating to learn it, now I'm having fun with it. So if you'd like to see my first experience with the MPC-1, which is the first Akai device that I really deep dove into, you can click or tap up over here. And if you'd like to see me remix the THX theme on my second channel, also on the MPC-1, you can click or tap down over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.